the best things that God has for you in your life are on the other side of your comfort zone. And our lives will never be the same in many cases.
Kondracki, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. What's up, Matt?
So, why do so many of us hesitate to step out of our comfort zone even when we know that it could unlock our true potential?
I think for a lot of people, they struggle with stepping out of their comfort zone because they're so like addicted to their comfort, the things that they enjoy, the things that are familiar to them. I think that a lot of times people stay in a comfortable place and they don't really want to test the waters because they don't want to disrupt what they have going, and they don't want to find something on the other side of their comfort zone that they don't like, or something that is maybe worse off. And so they maybe look at stepping out as a negative thing instead of a positive thing. And they kind of are evaluating the risk and reward and thinking, I'm pretty content where I'm at. I'm pretty content in my comfort zone here. Like, let me just stay here. It's probably not worth it to step out.
I think it's one of those things with just different fears where you have the fear of failure, the fear of others' opinions, where, this can just build in your mind to the point where you're too afraid to take any kind of significant step in one way or another, and you're
Yeah.
just kind of stuck in that shell.
Yeah, absolutely. Those things definitely play a factor. Like, you start thinking about, is it really worth it for me to step out? What are people going to say? What are they going to think if I pursue something? Like, if it doesn't seem like it's a great idea on the outside looking in, like, am I going to get ridiculed for that? And I think that fear of what people think can definitely be a part of it. And then fear of failure, like, what if I invest these resources? What if I take the time, spend the energy, and it doesn't work out and I end up feeling like I wasted my time? Like, those are definitely real things in people's mind that holds them back, I think.
Yeah. And at the same time, if you can step out of that comfort zone that, we want to transform who we are, whether that's achieving our goals or, whatever that looks like. And by doing that, at the very least, I would say fall forward, because you're going to fail when you put yourself out there with whatever that looks like. But
Yeah.
by consistently doing that and building the courage to do that and, getting that 1% better every day over time, you're going to see improvement.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of failures can lead up to a big success, right? Like, I think we see that with a lot of, like, business success stories. We'll have someone who just failed and failed and failed, but they never gave up. And that's the important thing. They kept picking themselves back up, reinventing themselves. They might have failed this time, but they learned something from it that they're going to apply to their next attempt. And then eventually, boom, they finally had a success. And that's what propelled them, like, exponentially to grow and, see amazing future successes, because they had the strength to say, I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to bow out, but I'm just going to, like, keep moving forward and keep picking myself back up again.
So whether it's having the strength to overcome anxiety or the strength to, keep putting one foot in front of the other and keep progressing, where does the strength from our faith in God come from?
Absolutely. I think the scripture is very clear that God wants us to step out by faith out of our comfort zones. And it's actually funny. A while back, I actually was kind of thinking through these things in my own life. I'm someone who's more cautious in some ways. Like, I'm not really a thrill seeker, and so there's some things that I've just been, like, really cautious to and avoiding, like, stepping out of my comfort zone with. And I came across this YouTube channel one time, and they're not a Christian YouTube channel, but I actually, like, really resonated with their content. They're called Yes Theory. I don't know if you ever heard of them before.
I haven't, no.
They have this model and this kind of vision and idea that the best things in your life are on the other side of your comfort zone. And so their whole channel is about pushing people to step out of their comfort and into the unknown, and just watching the beauty that unfolds in life when you make those decisions. And I really resonated with that. I was thinking, like, man, why does this feel like something, like, it feels like something that relates to the Bible? It feels like something. And I started to think about, like, what God calls us to. And he calls us to walk by faith, trusting him, even when things don't make sense, even when things are clearly away from your comfort zone, he wants you to walk into them and just trust him to lead you. Trust him who has called you to it to like continue to complete it, right? Like and see you through whatever he's calling you to do. And I think about the scripture in Matthew 14, the story where Peter is on the boat with the disciples, and there's a big storm happening, and Jesus wasn't there. He sent them ahead, and all of a sudden he comes walking to them on the water, right? And it says in Matthew chapter 14, that about 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came towards them walking on the water. When the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified. In their fear, they cried out, "It's a ghost!" But Jesus spoke to them at once. "Don't be afraid," he said. "Take courage. I am here." Then Peter called to him, "Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you walking on the water." "Yes, come," Jesus said. So Peter went over the side of the boat and walked on the water towards Jesus. And that is just a powerful example, I think, that kind of sums up stepping out by faith of our comfort zone. Now, I know Peter, he got distracted by the waves around him, started to sink, like, and people love to focus on how he failed. And Jesus actually even says, like, "Oh, ye of little faith," like, he lost like that faith when he turned his eyes away from Jesus and he started to really sink into the waves. But I still think it's a powerful example of someone stepping out by faith, because here's the reality: like in all of human history, there's only ever been two people to walk on water. It's Jesus and it's Peter, right? Like, and so the other disciples are on the boat still, like whether they're fearful, whether they're just in awe, like they didn't step out of the boat, right? So they have to sit there and wonder, like, man, what if I had stepped out too, right? And so I think for us, like when we consider that, like God calls us to do amazing things, not for us, but for the kingdom of God. And when we say yes to them, in spite of our feelings of discomfort, like we can just watch as God moves and blesses in a powerful way, and our lives will never be the same in many cases. I think about one of our pastors here, Pastor Danny Ford. He felt the call of God to go plant a church in Florida, and like there was not, it's not a church there. He's going there to start it, right? And it's a lot of stepping out by faith to do something like that. But you know what? God has been with him every step of the way. He's seen God move. He's seen God do amazing things. And he wouldn't have seen those things if he had just stayed in the boat instead of stepping out by faith. And so I think for our lives, like whatever God is calling us to, even if it's scary, even if it's something that seems crazy on paper, it doesn't make sense, like we need to trust him that he's not going to call us to do something that he's not going to see us through.
And one thing is looking forward into the future where, you have to step out, you have to put yourself in uncomfortable circumstances where you don't necessarily know where you're going to end up. And I think that can be something that, definitely affects you, that is scary in a way. And the best way that I've heard to combat that is where you can look at your life in the past and see how the dots have connected to lead you to where you are. And that should give you the confidence and the courage to see that God is guiding you. God is going to lead you continually to where he has you to be. Even in my own life, where I started going to Lifehouse, and just how my life has transformed, my faith, getting baptized, all of that, how over the period of about a year, how, my life has been completely transformed for the best. And I know that God's going to keep working in my life and leading me and guiding me to where he has me to be. And, that has led me to starting the show. And again, I don't know what's going to come of it. I don't know if anyone is going to watch, but at the end of the day, that I know my faith in God is being strengthened by it, by, reading different scriptures, trying to learn it to be able to spread it on here,
Yeah.
and just the ability to grow my faith and share my faith with others.
Absolutely, dude. And I'm proud of you for stepping out. I think that that's an example for us to like, if you feel like God's calling you to do something, just saying yes, whether it seems like one person will listen or a million people will listen, like I'm going to do it because God called me to it and I want to be faithful to his call in my life. And I'm honored to be your first guest on here for sure. I think that's an awesome blessing. Like be able to look back at this one day and see how God has been faithful in your journey. But I mean, the same type of thing in my life, like in a spiritual sense, like all the doors that he's opened that I've said yes to and walked into, like coming to Lifehouse, God opened the door clearly for me in a beautiful way. And I was like, God, I'm going to say yes to you. And I walked through it, and it's been a tremendous blessing in my life. Like it's been such an awesome place to grow in God, and then to minister, to pour out into other people's lives. I also think about some practical ways that God has like really moved after I said yes. Like thinking about like friendships, and like I'll tell you a story. Like when I was in college, I had this opportunity as a student to be on like a hall leadership team, and you in the process of it, you're interviewing with different halls, trying to see like where's the best fit. And I really just felt like God was calling me to step out of my comfort zone and to just sign up for some halls that I didn't even know anyone on. And that was a little bit, a little bit scary because I didn't know the people, and I was just going in blind with complete strangers. But I was like, I felt God stirring me to do it. So I was like, all right, yes, Lord, I'll do it. And I signed up. And I'll never forget, I walked into this one interview, and my boy Cyree was sitting there across the way, and we just connected instantly. And you know what? He's like one of my best friends to this day. Like I said, yes, I went on to that hall, and through that yes to God, like he's brought some of my closest friends who have been challenging me to grow in God, who've been like encouraging me in my walk, and just been like a true friend, like they're throughout my life, and who will be in my wedding, right? Like those people wouldn't have been in my life if I hadn't have said yes to that stirring of God, right? Like, so it's absolutely like affects every aspect of your life. Like, if you feel like God is saying, step out and trust me, then you just need to say yes. And regardless of what happens next, like, you will be blessed because you said yes to God. Like, his purpose is best for your life, and you can trust him. Don't try to do things your own way. Don't resist what God's calling you to do, but like truly lean into it. And maybe even just say like, be quick to say yes to God. Like maybe don't even really take time to think about what it's all going to mean, because maybe that'll like psych you out of it and get you to turn away. But like just like jump all in. Like as soon as God calls you to it, yes, I'm doing it. No matter what it is, I don't care. I'm going to say yes to God because He is sovereign and He's in control of my life, and He knows what's best for me. And so if He's calling me to do something, I'm going to trust Him.
Yeah, because if you have that thought of, I got to do this, I got to do something, and you don't, that anxiety just builds in your mind, and the giant you got to slay that's right in front of you, it's just going to keep growing and growing and growing
Yeah.
and get to a point where, you don't even take the first step because
Yeah.
that's how intimidating that it has become.
Yeah, and one thing I'll just go back to is I don't want you to live in the fear of, or like the regret of what could have been. And I think there's so many people who get to the end of their life and they look back and they're like, man, like what if I did this different? Like what if I did take that chance? What if I and they look back and say like, man, I wish I had stepped out by faith. And that's the flip side of it. Like, we talked about I talked about that story with Peter and the disciples. Like I have to wonder if later they're sitting around the campfire some years later and they're like, man, like I wish I had stepped out of the boat with Peter. Like who knows what would have happened? Maybe I would have walked on water too. Like I think that we can definitely like look back and say like, man, like I wish I took that opportunity. And for the times I've said yes in my life, there's also been times where I've said no and I've resisted and stayed in my comfort zone. And man, it's hard to think about what could have been, what you missed out on because you were too hesitant to say yes to the calling in that moment.
Yeah. Even it's one of those things trying to conceptualize and truly like grasp that we only have one life and we're going to die because I'm 21 years old, like we're young, and it's one of those things where it feels like it's not going to be for it forever, but and at the same time to realize that with this one life, that what are you going to reap for the kingdom, and how are you going to let God use you? And because it's one of those things where you don't want to live a life where you're in a job where you're miserable, where you just have this awful miserable life, instead of obeying and being receptive to what God has for you,
Yeah.
and through that letting him guide you along the path where you're going to get blessed. He's going to uh, you're going to grow in your faith. He's going to lead you to where he has you to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we want to make sure that we live this life to the fullest, and that comes when you follow Jesus. Like he said, I've come that they might have life and life to the full. Like the fullness that this life has is when you submit your will to God and say, God, I'm taking up your will, whatever that is. Like the only things that are going to last into eternity, like once we pass away, are what we did for the kingdom, right? None of the money that we stacked up, none of the fame that we accumulated, none of the following on Instagram, like none of that's going to matter when we get into eternity. What's going to matter are the souls that were changed because we were faithful to share the gospel. Like what's going to matter are the spiritual like things that we've sown into in this life instead of just the earthly like things that we sow into.
So it seems to be a reoccurring theme so far on my channel that to either stay disciplined or beating procrastination or growing in your faith, that these things take time, and it comes to the basis of taking one step after the other. And the hardest step is the first step. And the goal, once again, should be to get 1% better every day. And it's one of those things that you will see progress after a long period of time. But early on, it's going to be tough trying to build those habits, build those systems of, whether it's stepping out and doing uncomfortable things or, being disciplined with your workout schedule. So I wasn't sure what you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, I think when we think about this, like we can compare it to other areas of our life. Like you mentioned, working out, like trying to get just a little bit better every single day. I honestly think like if we're gonna start, like I want to challenge myself, like and set and plan through like ways that I want to improve. So I think it starts there, like having a plan and really just challenging ourselves to step out in different ways that maybe you're resistant to. I definitely think it's good to start small and then to grow big, like work towards a bigger change, bigger comfort zone steps. Like something small for me in my life, like that I was challenged is like to just try new things, right? Like I've been someone who I'd order chicken and fries off the menu everywhere I go, right? Like, so I challenged myself like a couple years ago, like if people offer you like new food, like to try, like say yes. Like, so anytime someone really offers me like new food, even if I don't think I'm gonna like it, I hate seafood, but like if somebody offers me something, like I'm gonna say yes and at least try it, like so I can experience it and step out of my comfort zone in that way. I'm not gonna like let the fear of disliking the food hold me back from trying it. So that's a small thing, but absolutely consider different areas of your life where you feel like you want to step out. And maybe I think for a lot of people, like it can be tough to meet new people. Like they stick to the same people they know. It's hard for them. I would challenge my like if I was in their shoes, I would challenge myself to step out and maybe try to meet three new people in the course of like a week. Like let me just like introduce myself to someone new, like and try to get to know them. Like I think that that's a way you can step out and like again, like some beautiful results can happen. Like you might meet your new best friend. You might meet someone to go work out at the gym with. You might meet your spouse, right? Who knows? I think that it's important that we challenge ourselves in these ways. And I mean, spiritually as well, like challenge yourself to share the gospel. I think people can get hung up, and part of why we don't share our faith is because we're in that comfort zone. We don't want to step out. We don't want to stir the waters. What if they don't like me? What if they get frustrated? What if I don't have all the answers? And so we have all these things that hold us in the boat when God's calling us to step out and share our faith. Like that's a command of God to go and preach the gospel. So why are we staying quiet? So in that, I would say like challenge yourself. Like I'm going to share the gospel like 3 times when I go to the mall this weekend, or I'm going to go to that football game. I'm going to find a way to share the gospel with someone while I'm there, right? And just challenge yourself. But I think the reality is like you've got to be intentional with it. Like you can't just say like, yeah, I'm going to start stepping out of my comfort zone. I'm just going to wait for the moment to appear. Like I think you really need to plan it out and really keep that intentionally on your mind and focus so that when those moments come, you'll recognize them more easily and you'll say, this is my chance. And you'll just jump in, even if you're feeling fear.
hmm And again, it's one of those things where doing it once is going to make the second time easier than the third
Yeah,
and the
it
fourth and
snowballs.
so on. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think that's a good way to wrap it up. So, Connor, brother, thank you for joining me, of course. Hopefully,
Absolutely.
we'll have you on again here in the near future.
Of course, I'd love to come back, man. Thank you so much. I enjoy chatting with you, man. It's definitely something where if I could just say one last thing, I would just say I would tell people seek discomfort. Like that's where the best things that God has for you in your life are on the other side of your comfort zone.